Welcome, everyone, to episode 87 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan Anderson, coming to you on an early Sunday morning from the continent of California. This was originally a one-person podcast, and I brought a couple of my friends in. We had a really good run, had a lot of fun shows you guys can check out. I'll give you guys the information where you can find them. You know, life happens as it does sometimes when, you know, a bunch of guys are in their mid-30s. So we decided to go back to doing just a one-person podcast where, you know, through the power of social media, I find people that are interesting, that have common interests, whether it be sports, basketball, you know, football, baseball. This is generally a wrestling-centric podcast. So I, you know, run into people through social media. Whoever I, you know, can find interesting that wants to talk wrestling, we usually have them on as guests. This week will be no different. We'll get to the guest here momentarily. But I want to let you guys know where you can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. All now 87 episodes of the show are available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts. Rate, review, subscribe. Leave a 5-star review. They're available pretty much everywhere you get podcasts. You can also check out the wrestling writing that I do. I did a kind of a fun WWE NFL mock draft, picks 1 through 5. For those who know me, I'm not really a big mock draft guy, so I kind of put a WWE spin on the top 5 NFL picks. I wouldn't know what any of them look like if they walked right into this room here. So as you can read it on nocoastbias.com, you'll see that I had some fun with it. I do a little bit of writing for a Royal Pain, which is a Sacramento Kings heavy website. I have grown up a Sacramento Kings fan, so you can always check that out as well. This week's guest is coming from Toronto. He covers the Toronto Raptors for The Athletic. Blake Murphy, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. Just it's a little cold out here, but no, it's nothing compared to what you guys deal with up north. But
yeah, it's fine.
A little chilly up here this morning, but all is well.
Yeah, it's fine here. It's around, I don't know what it is. I think it's like 0, but we use Celsius, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. 32?
Yes.
That's fine.
Something like that. Yeah, I think we were in the early 30s when I was coming to work this morning, so a little cold, but nonetheless. Where can people follow you? I know you cover the Toronto Raptors for The Athletic, but where can people follow you on social media, get all your stuff? The floor is yours to let people know.
Yeah, I throw everything up on Twitter at Blake Murphy ODC, and then all my work's at The Athletic this year. It used to be when I did these appearances, it was like a 5-minute Paul Heyman level promo to say all the places that I'm writing for. But this year it's just The Athletic, so it's nice and easy.
All right. So I know we've interacted a little bit on social media because of our mutual interest in wrestling. But one of the things I always like asking people is, how did you first get into wrestling? Was it something as a child, as a teenager, as an adult? How'd you get to where you are as a fan?
Yeah, I liked it as a little kid, but like we weren't. So I have 2 younger brothers, and I'm a little bit older than them. So I liked it as a little kid, but then I wasn't allowed to watch it once I had younger brothers. So for me, it was more like grade 7, grade 8. Like I changed schools in grade 7, and some of the first friends that I met would like. The one guy would have people over to like watch wrestling pay-per-views and like wrestle in the basement and stuff. So that was kind of it, like new school, new friends. And then, there's now my fandom has grown because my one brother is like super into it, and it's the only thing we really have in common. So if I keep up with like New Japan, then I have something to talk to him about. Mm-hmm. If I, God forbid I be a mark and only watch Raw and SmackDown, then we can't chat. But if I keep up with New Japan and stuff like that, and now in Toronto, I have a nice circle of friends where like when there are events here, we'll go check them out and stuff like that. But mostly around like grade 7 time, probably. I might be getting the exact year wrong, but around then. That's
the one thing that's really interesting now about wrestling in 2018 is that, when I was growing up as a kid, there was the WWE and there was WCW. There was a small underground contingent of ECW fans, but just like you said with New Japan, like we now have access with social media to, get information about your New Japan or your Progress or CMLL or all these different wrestling companies all across the globe. And it's something that, just like you said, like if you wanted to just be a mark and just watch the main 2 WWE products, but even now, like even if you're not a fan of that, you have so many other options of pro wrestling that you can watch across the globe. It's literally at your fingertips, and you can stream it on your phone, on your laptop, or a tablet or any kind of device nowadays. I think it makes for a better and a more healthier wrestling product than I can ever remember.
Yeah, for sure. And like I've seen, I think it was Xavier Woods recently make this point that like when people dislike the product or whatever, it's like it's almost on. So I shouldn't say it's on the consumer, because obviously the WWE product is bad a lot of the time, and people shouldn't have to like that. But if you're a wrestling fan, there should be something for you somewhere out there right now. Whether it's New Japan or WWE, or whether you're one of those people that just like, oh, I'll watch NXT and then I'll watch the pay-per-views, which is kind of where I've settled in on the WWE side, because I don't have time or patience to watch these terrible Raws and SmackDowns of late, especially since the basketball season started back up. So I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's there should be something that any wrestling fan, either active or lapsed wrestling fan, should like right now.
Yeah, I think that is the hard thing too. And I know that you do a lot of work with the Raptors. I think right now, pro sports to me is the only thing where I can sit there and devote 2 to 3 hours of my nightly television watching. And because it's not something it's something you can watch with the advent of DVR and streaming devices, but it's a little bit difficult because a lot of the time, like if you're watching, say like the Raptors play the Kings, you can follow along with the commentary on Twitter, but if you're a quarter behind on your DVR, it makes it a little bit difficult. So I think, live sports is the only thing, or one of the only things now where you really have to be appointment viewing. And especially with the network, like you can go back, you can watch NXT, you can watch NXT UK, you can watch any of the other events, but even that's kind of where I've settled into, to where like I'll catch NXT not on the Wednesdays when it premieres on the network, but I'll watch it on like a Thursday afternoon where I'm trying to kill time in between, jobs or something like that. And I think that's something to where you can really have access to watch, whatever you want, whenever you want. And just like you said, like with you covering the Raptors, I imagine it's got to be hard to devote 6-7 hours a week to keep up with every WWE product.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a chance to, and like Raw and SmackDown are bad. So
yes,
that's it. I might throw them on, like if it's a non-Raptors game night, it might be on in the background while I'm working or something like that. But that's about it.
Yeah, I think the days of, getting home at 8 o'clock to watch Monday Night Raw till 11, I think those days are past. And I think it has to do equally with the product not being as creative as it used to be. I think they've kind of settled into a comfort zone that I still think the in-ring product is as good as it's ever been from a pure wrestling standpoint, but the characters and the development and the overall story arcs have been challenging, would be an understatement, I think, for me in 2018.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is too, like for like to our point about like it being missable and it not being that like, oh, you can't DVR it because you'll miss out. It's like nothing really happens.
Yes.
On the like, you can kind of just keep up pay-per-view by pay-per-view and like keep a finger on the pulse. So, which is nice because it lets you kind of be a casual fan a little bit more easily with like that kind of lower barrier to entry. But it also, I feel for the people who watch every hour of every episode, because that's going to be tough at this point.
Yeah, especially with Raw. Raw's definitely lacking some kind of either general cohesiveness or some, interest. I think SmackDown, the two most interesting things on that show right now are obviously the organic meteoric rise lately of Becky Lynch, and then the change in direction of Daniel Bryan. Have you got a chance to keep up with Becky or Bryan, or what are some of your thoughts on their development?
Yeah, I've kept up with SmackDown a lot more than Raw. And I caught Daniel Bryan's promo this week where he was just ranting about climate change. Was amazing. I've always been in the minority and really like Daniel Bryan better as a heel. So this has been a lot of fun. And then, Becky, obviously that storyline, you can't be a wrestling fan online and have not kept up with it and like caught the clips and stuff like that. It's been pretty incredible. And her promo work has always been very good. And it's just kind of gone to another level the last little bit. And I think what's really nice about kind of an organic development like this is like, I know WWE has wanted to push women's wrestling more and more, and they obviously have the talent on the roster to justify that. But there have been times where when they do that kind of stuff, it feels a little forced in the sense that they're telling you they're doing something special and new. Whereas this Becky Lynch thing and even like the Charlotte Ronda thing that followed, that felt like it didn't need WWE telling you it was special and it was new and it was something important. It just kind of felt that way on its own. And I think that's kind of an important development for the growth of women's wrestling within the WWE is that if these things start happening on their own and fans kind of Becky and fans make Becky and that storyline what it is, I think sustainably that's more sustainable in terms of getting women to the top of the card than having an all women's pay-per-view and having WWE recite to you that it's very historic that they're doing so.
Yeah, I thought one thing that really intrigued me about the Becky Lynch storyline that I think is missing in the current product is a lot of the interaction on social media. Now, it is all the work, and they do blur the lines on that. But I think, with the Becky and the Charlotte and the Ronda, that sort of triangle of the storyline is where it feels as real as you can make that in 2018, to where like they're taking detailed jabs on social media. Now, yes, it's probably all a work, but it feels like something to where like Becky's rise feels in a sense the same way that Daniel Bryan's did in WrestleMania 30, to where it kind of feels like it's something to where the fans are pushing that, and it's something to where the fans are getting behind, that the fans feel a sense of ownership towards, as opposed to the other way to where you have, and I'm probably in the minority here, to where I'm actually a big Roman Reigns fan. I know a lot of adults aren't, just because they feel like he's been pushed down our throat. But with the women's revolution, there has been some of it has been force fed. With seemingly every week there's a new historic announcement that's never happened, and it can be a little bit of an overkill. But I think the Becky feud, or the rise of Becky Lynch, feels a lot more organic, and it's something to where fans can really bite into and have that sense of the ownership in the storyline, to where they feel like they've had a lot to do with that rise. And it feels natural, it feels fresh, and it feels believable. And I think in 2018, that's something WWE is definitely missing.
Yeah, and I think there's a case of, the high tide kind of rising all boats too, because of the kind of natural organic interest in her. Now you have things like, Ronda Rousey has obviously been awesome since she came on, but that carries a little bit more weight on the Raw side. And then you have, Charlotte and Asuka, who are phenomenal performers, who are now in these bigger storylines that feel a little bit bigger because they're a part of this kind of Becky Lynch adjacent storyline. So I think I think it's going to help the whole division, really.
Yeah, and one thing with Ronda that I was really impressed with, the match that she had at Survivor Series with Charlotte, and it wasn't really anything from an in-ring standpoint. I was really impressed with, and I caught bits and pieces of Survivor Series. Again, having me sit through a full 3-hour WWE pay-per-view. If I can't sit through a Raw, more than likely I can't sit through a pay-per-view. But there were two matches that I was really interested in. It was Charlotte against Ronda, which I've said before, and there's a column I wrote for WrestleZone.com to where I felt at the time, before Ronda debuted, I felt that could be your WrestleMania 35 main event. But seeing Charlotte and Ronda, the way that Ronda reacted towards the Charlotte Flair attack after the match, I think told a great story. And Ronda being able to further that storyline by not really saying a word, but just the selling of that attack afterwards. I think, for Ronda, you got to think Ronda's really only been training in the pro wrestling or the sports entertainment realm for 6-7 months. Coming from the UFC, there's not really an emphasis on selling the story of your injury, so to speak. And I think one thing that really helped legitimize that beatdown was the way that Ronda sold it going back up the ramp. And I think that furthers the storyline with Charlotte. And that can also bleed into, like you said, what they're doing with Asuka and Becky Lynch moving forward with TLC.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's a fun time, and it should be pretty good. That TLC match should be awesome. Hopefully Becky's like cool medically, but
yeah, I've heard bits and pieces about them her not being cleared, and then I've heard she is cleared. So it'll be interesting to see. It's in my neck of the woods in San Jose. It's going to be a fun card. I know the Rollins and Ambrose one is something that we've all kind of been waiting on, that Ambrose heel turn for quite a while, and that storyline will get developed further. But as a kid, who were some of the wrestlers that you initially kind of gravitated towards?
Yeah, so Jericho was like the first. Well, I guess Bret Hart earlier on, because I'm Canadian, and you can't. That's like, to renew your passport, you have to like talk about the WrestleMania main event with Stone Cold.
Yes.
That's like part of the citizenship test and everything. You name everyone in the Hart Foundation, and
like question 7.
Yeah, exactly. But Jericho was like the first guy who was like my guy pretty early. Like I started tuning in like kind of toward the tail end of WCW. Like it was after like once I started watching regularly again, it was kind of like the NWO had fizzled down. But yeah, so the late WCW Jericho and then WWE Jericho was like my guy. It actually really cool. I got to interview him last year, which for a story, which was like kind of it's weird because like I've been around sports long enough now that like I don't really get starstruck talking to anyone. Like the only time it's really happened was interviewing Steve Nash. But then like I interviewed Chris Jericho and I was just like stumbling over my words and kind of dumbfounded about it. So Jericho was my guy pretty early on, and then like this is a little later, but like Edge and Christian and all the Canadian guys basically is what I'm saying.
Edge was someone that, and I've been going back and watching Raws from 2004, 2005 just to kill time when I'm at this job. But Edge is someone to me that I just don't. I love his work so much, and I just wonder. Like he always feels like he's been one of the most underrated stars in WWE history. Like he had great matches as a tag team. He had excellent matches as an Intercontinental Champion. Like I was just watching the feud that he had with Matt Hardy when Hardy came back. That was something in the same scope with the Becky feud at the time. Now, obviously, the way they got there was differently, but those things felt so incredibly real and organic that, you know, Edge is someone that just as I've gotten older, I've had a newfound respect for his career. Because I think at the time I didn't really understand what I was watching from a technical standpoint or a storytelling standpoint. But Edge's career is really one that I don't remember really him ever having a bad match.
Yeah, I do wonder sometimes if he's the victim of being at the top of the card in like kind of a weaker era where it was just like him, Cena, and Orton kind of for an extended period of time. And then he almost, you know, it's kind of like in sports, we compare eras and you try to era normalize like baseball stats or basketball stats or whatever. And I wonder if maybe because he stood out, because he stood out in a time where the top of the card was a little weaker, maybe that hurts. But I don't know, man. Like there was that stretch of time where like the top 6 or 7 guys on SmackDown were just putting on ridiculous matches like week after week, and Edge was a big part of that. And then obviously him at the top of the card, like some of his feuds with Cena were pretty incredible. You mentioned the Matt Hardy one. Edge is awesome, man. It sucks that he had to go as early as he did, but yeah, he had a not only a good peak, but like even for a guy who had to retire early, he had like a really long run of being awesome.
Yeah, there was one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time that I think kind of gets overlooked as well, because I think you are right. I think after there's kind of that era where I think a lot of people, you know, I'll be 35 soon, but I think a lot of people of my age range kind of fell out of wrestling, which is I think like WrestleMania 20 to probably WrestleMania 26. And that seemed to be the big run of like your Edge, your Orton, and you know, Cena was consistent for a long time during that. But Edge's match that he had at WrestleMania 24, The Undertaker, was, I think that was the first match. I think that was the first really good wrestling match, aside from the one he had with Batista the year before. But I think that was one of Edge's, you know, that was Edge's only real first main event at WrestleMania. But I think it started that streak of The Undertaker having these great matches. And that match at WrestleMania 24 is one I think that gets overlooked that I thought was really good.
Yeah, that's a great match. And that's such a weird that's such a weird WrestleMania to look back on, because like that's the Floyd Mayweather Big Show one, which is super weird. And then also like the other title matches, Orton, Cena, Triple H. Yes. It's like the fact that wasn't the main event and Edge and The Undertaker was the main event kind of puts it in perspective to you. That had Michaels versus Flair on it too. So like that's a loaded Mania. So for Edge and Undertaker to main event that one and like put on a really good match, and I think they got more time than any other match. Yeah, they did, according to Wikipedia. Like that tells you kind of how big that was in that moment. That
was also the first of 2 Money in the Banks that CM Punk won. That, you know, Shelton Benjamin was a part of that. I think that was Jericho's first Mania back after returning, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because he wasn't at 23, but that was a really deep and talented WrestleMania 24.
Yeah, that's a cool one. And it's I mean, looking at the Wikipedia page, it's kind of goofy. Like we have a Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjill match, so clearly women's wrestling has
came a long way
since then. But yeah, it's I don't know. That's a good one. That's kind of one I might want to go back and rewatch. That's a loaded card.
Yeah, that is. I know you talked about being starstruck meeting Jericho. I was actually starstruck as well meeting Brett for the first time. Like I had met him. I was an adult. I I had a 401k, I have benefits at my job, and I legitimately forgot how to put a full sentence together meeting Brett twice. Just
Nice.
his aura, his presence, everything.
I've never gotten to meet him. I've phone interviewed him before, but I've never met him.
Yeah, he was I've always contended he's probably my favorite wrestler of all time. I think Shawn is the best. That's always a matter of personal perception, but Brett's always been one of my favorite wrestlers. We know that whole family, that the Brett, Owen, unfortunately we just lost Anvil relatively recently, and also Bulldog and Pillman. Like, that whole stable of wrestling was so much fun and so deep and talented.
Yeah, it's great, man. The family, I don't know, it's cool. There's still kind of a legacy, like Hart's still based out of Calgary, and he still kind of does the rounds for like signings and appearances and stuff like that. And like, I think, he's a guy here who everyone, like, if he rolls through a Jays game or something like that, like, players on the team get excited. And I think he's quietly a guy who, like, his legacy is held up really well, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, he was
a really nice dude too.
Yeah, he was incredibly nice to me. Like, I'd met him twice, and shook my hand, signed a. It was right around the time where he was dealing with a cancer issue, so there was shirts that it came out to sort of help support that, and the money went to that. And a really kind guy, really was there to help sign some of the shirts that we had or shirts that we had bought in regards to help supporting. So he was definitely someone that was a childhood hero of mine, and being able to meet him was a really cool moment. That one time, the 2 times I was able to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I know you're covering the Raptors now. I want to get into a little bit of that before we veer off here. But what are some of your early thoughts on the season so far? I know that I know we chatted a little bit when they traveled through Sacramento, but with the team playing as well as they are, what are some of your favorite memories of being a Raptor fan, or what are your thoughts on the season so far?
Yeah, the season's been great so far. Like, obviously they're 21-6. It couldn't have started much better on the court. I do think it's kind of funny where the Raptors were mediocre for so long that the fan base has. I mean, there's a little bit of insecurity about being the only Canadian team, and just like the general insecurities of having rooted for this franchise and stuff. But I feel like now, as they've gotten better, they get ratcheted up even more. So like, they're 21-6, they're the best team in the league. They're like number 7 in defense and number 3 in offense or something like that. And every game feels like it's the end of the world, and like they're supposed to be a finished product here on December 9th. And it's kind of a little exhausting because obviously they're integrating a new coach in Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, and there's a lot still to come. But it's great. I think this is the best chance they've had to make a finals run. I think, the Kawhi Leonard thing hangs over things, but as long as they do as well as they can on the court, that gives them kind of the best chance to retain him longer term. And then it's just been, it's been a ton of fun to watch a team this good execute the way they have. And there's still stuff they can do better, and there's still a lot of room for growth, but also they've just like punked teams at times, and it's pretty fun when they find that top gear, especially on the defensive end, to watch them go. I'll also say I was in Sacramento for a game. I haven't traveled for work really much until this year, and your Kings are crazy fun, and De'Aaron Fox is really, really good.
Yes, it is something to where the overall vibe that from the people that I talk to in the city is they may not be good, but they're fun. And we're all just kind of waiting on the ESPN alert from Woj to where Vivek does something silly to blow the team up. It's like, I don't want to call it like, it's not an insecurity thing that we have. We just know that something like this can't be sustainable because of the leadership in charge of that. Like, even recently with that Yahoo thing that came out about, Jaeger, there was a report out that Jaeger's job was in jeopardy. It was all kind of like an odd humbling to where it's like, okay, like the people in charge are still the people in charge. And yeah, the city, it's fun to have a fun basketball team. And that's something I've said since the beginning of the season, to where De'Aaron Fox is a top baby face. I compare it a lot, and he's so much fun. He makes the guys around the team better. The Buddy Hield thing is starting to kick into gear, and it's a fun time to be a Kings fan because we've had to go through a really rough stretch for quite a while.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you guys are getting that a little bit, and I hope Vivek keeps his hands off and lets it just grow kind of organically. I don't know, man. I feel like I would live in dread of that for a while. And coming from a franchise that had terrible management for like 20 years before Masai Ujiri got here, man, I hope it works out okay, because you guys are in a good spot where it'd be a fun kind of starting point to build from.
Yeah, and that's something that, even with Golden State being like an hour and a half drive down the way in Northern California, like we all kind of recognize that, even if we did make a late season run into the 8th seed, we're probably going to get drubbed by Golden State. But if nothing else, it reminds me of, early 94, 95 in Sacramento, to where it felt like you were watching the beginning of something really cool. And I think everyone's still a little bit nervous that somehow management's going to find a way to like fire Jaeger and replace him with like a Google Assistant or something on the, we're all just kind of like, okay, please don't mess this up. Like, please do everything the right way. But it is something to where, this time last year, I wasn't going out of my way to watch every game. And I think, even yesterday I was at a Christmas party, and as soon as that ended, I was like, oh, we're still hanging in with the Pacers in the third quarter. And, obviously I think we lost that game by 10, but it was just fun to be able to like, oh, wow, this team is competent. They're fun. They're deep. They have a young point guard that you can build around. Cause I think for a lot of years, the franchise was sort of like a point guard rehab facility. Like Rondo made a stop through, Ty Lawson will make a stop through, George Hill will make a stop through, but we never really had like that franchise point guard that helped, kind of gave us a sense of hope.
Yeah, and that position offers so much stability too, right? Where if you have a guy who could potentially be top 10 at that position, that's a nice spot to kind of build from. And obviously De'Aaron Fox isn't there yet, but he certainly has like that kind of potential. And then I think too, that just kind of helps, stabilizing that spot a little bit. Okay, well now he knows how to get, he knows how to find Bogdanovic and Bjelica, and like Buddy Hield gets to get going because he's being asked to maybe make a little less, and he can kind of be a scorer. And Willie Cauley-Stein is probably not long for Sacramento, but like he's had a really nice year too. And it kind of just, the point guard position is so important, and it's why you almost have to have patience if you're a rebuilding team and you decide to build around a point guard, because like that's the hardest position to learn. That's where it's steepest kind of out of the gate. So a guy being as fun and as good as Fox is early on, hopefully, like I said, hopefully the Kings are thinking the right way about this, and they're not going to throw over the hill vets at it next summer, but
we're hoping not. That's
yeah,
because I know we do end up losing. Like they're probably going to lose Randolph. I would be willing to bet they'll make an offer for Willie. They'll probably make an offer, a relatively nice size offer, and kind of frame it around like we're committed to the grassroots, keeping our players in Sacramento, things like that. And I do hope as well, like I hope they don't end up maxing out like a lower tier vet just to get a score in there. I know they were looking at Otto Porter for a little while. I know they wanted Otto Porter about a year and a half ago. Couldn't get him. I know they wanted to go after Levine this year and didn't get him. But they're going to have a lot of money, walking into this free agency. And I had wrote something for the Royal Pain as a kind of a prediction to where there were two things I wanted to get out of this season. Was I wanted to have fun watching them play, and I wanted, if nothing else, Sacramento to look like a better destination for some kind of free agent, because they're going to have a lot of money. And I just hope the idea of like coming in and playing with Fox and playing with shooters and playing with a fast-paced team can be appealing to a free agent that, Sacramento, like you said, we've had sort of a rotation of older vets come in. I'm hoping we can be a city that can attract someone that can also help the progression of this team moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think you guys are in a good, fun spot. Not 21-6 and heading to the NBA Finals fun, but it's.
Well, I mean, it's for us where we are kind of feels like 21-6 right now.
Yeah.
Having to go through the rough areas that we did to be where we are now. Again, I say it all the time. They're not good, but they're fun. And in a conference to where everyone's pretty much playing for second place because Golden State is Golden State. As long as I'm having fun watching them, and I can wear my Kings. I think the biggest compliment I've gotten all year being a Kings fan is I work out here in the Bay Area, so I work closer to Golden State than I do Sacramento as far as an arena standpoint. So there are a lot of Golden State Warrior fans out here. The biggest compliment I got all year is I wore a Sacramento Kings hoodie around town, and someone had called me a bandwagon fan. And I was like, okay, like I feel like we're back when people are thinking that it's cool to wear a Kings thing, and obviously you see a Kings fan and they're only wearing it because they're decent again. Like it kind of feels like it's a backhanded compliment, but it kind of felt like, no, I've been a fan of this team for 20 years and we're finally okay again.
Yeah, that's how you know you made it. When there are bandwagoners, that's when you know.
Absolutely. So I want to get you out of here on a couple things, a couple questions I'd like to ask all the guests that I have on here. What was the last thing you watched on the network?
On WWE Network?
Yes.
Survivor Series.
All right. What were your overall thoughts of that show? I know we talked a little bit about the Ronda Charlotte thing. What were your thoughts on that show?
Yeah, it was all right. Survivor Series is one of my least favorite because there are never any stakes and nothing ever matters. But I thought the Charlotte Ronda stuff and I like Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar more than most people seem to.
I actually thought that was the best match that Lesnar had in quite a while. Like the match he had with AJ at Survivor Series the year before was good, but I thought that was the best that Brock had made an opponent look since him and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 31. So I thought Brock did a really good job making Daniel Bryan look credible. I mean, Daniel Bryan's obviously a credible athlete, but I think Brock has a tendency to eat up a lot of the opponents. I think he did that with Joe, and I think he did that with Braun. But I think Brock gave a lot to Daniel Bryan, and I thought that was actually a really good story, which I think sometimes can be missing in 2018 Brock Lesnar matches.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. I was a little surprised when I hopped online after the match and saw the reception wasn't great because I agree with most of what you said. I thought it was good.
The only issue that I have with a lot of those Brock matches is he seems to hit that F5 out of nowhere after hitting it a couple times, and wrestlers may kick out or his opponents may kick out. I would just like to see sort of a more decisive finish, whereas opposed to like Daniel Bryan's getting all this offense in, or Samoa Joe or Braun are getting all this offense in, and then one F5 and the match is over, but it's like the fifth F5 of the match. And it might be nitpicking, but that's just something for me to where I would have liked to seen a little bit of a better finish.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of booked themselves into a corner with Brock anyway, where like even when you want a guy to get some stuff off of him, they feel they have to make him look super dominant. And I think that's a hard balance to strike between those two things.
I agree. And I know we had chatted via DM. When you came to Sacramento, where did you get a chance to eat?
Oh, almost nowhere. I was in Sacramento only for like 21 hours. So basically, like, I got in, I went right to shoot around. I went to my hotel and like relaxed for a little bit, and then I had to go to the game, and then my flight was like first thing the next morning. So I ate like the media meal. That was it.
Oh, okay. When you get a chance to come back, I know I sent you some squeeze in. The burgers are huge. I'll send you a picture of it when we get done, but it's like walking distance from the arena. And I will give them credit. I don't know if you've been to Sacramento before, but they're doing a really good job building up around that arena. Like they're doing a lot of stuff around Golden One to kind of make it a destination to where like you can come as a pregame meal and a postgame meal. I will tell you, downtown Sacramento did not always look that way. So I am really impressed with the way they're making that arena pop out.
It looks cool. I wish I had got to spend more time there. It's just the way the flight schedule worked. I was barely there.
All right, no problem. So we're gonna ride out of here on this one. I know I know we talked about it doing about a 30-minute one, and you've got a lot probably going on today. I've got to get back to work, but where can people check out your stuff again through social media? I know you're covering the Raptors with The Athletic, but where can people follow you?
Yeah, Blake Murphy ODC on Twitter, and then all my stuff's at The Athletic. Most of it The Athletic Toronto. So follow along there.
Sounds good. So next week, guys, we will be joined by Josiah Williams, who does a lot of the Wrestling Flow stuff that you guys see on Twitter. So he takes WWE themes and kind of puts a hip hop rap kind of spiel to him. So he'll be someone I've wanted to talk to for a while. So it'd be good to have him on there. You guys can check out all 87 episodes of the Gully Blanchard podcast by going on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, what have you, and searching Gully Blanchard. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLY BLANCHARD. All my writing is either at aroyalpain.com or nocoastbias.com. Blake, thank you very much for the time, man. I know something we want to do for a while. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll be back next week, and until then, we'll talk to you guys later.